We are back. Giants baseball, past, present, future. I'm Ralph Tyko with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I have two of the all-time mavens with me today, and history buffs. We're going back to Giants history. Christy Mathewson Day. He's not with me today, but in spirit, Al Blumkin is here. How you doing, Al?
All right. Weather stinks here, but all right.
Yeah. Things are always hectic.
Yeah.
You have a new cable company that you're dealing with, and
they're a problem.
I know how that goes. We have Comcast out here in the West, and it's horrible. It's hard. They really have.
Yeah, no, the people in Pittsburgh I'm on the Pirate Chat group with have lots of, always posting about complaints about Comcast.
Yeah. Oh.
I have Time Warner, which was taken over by Spectrum, which is owned by Charter Communications, and a lot of their export technicians are on strike. They've been on strike for 2 months.
Oh, so that is a problem.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, the best part of my retirement, besides my tally and my memories, is this show that this network that I produce. And without the technology, we've come this far to have a technology so I could have a podcast network and we could do it over the internet. Without that technology, none of it would exist. Yet it's that technology that causes me, over the course of a day, in little spurts, grief to the point where it becomes a trade-off. Especially being a dinosaur, you come to the computer late in life, and you never really catch up. I'll bet Ian, father of young twins, your kids are more proficient on the internet than you are.
Oh my God, I couldn't tell you. They find free programming, which if I had the thing, there would be a lot of money on cable. I'm like, how the heck did you even tap into this? We have Fios yeah, it's like, where the hell did you get this free thing? And Daddy, just press a few buttons. Oh my God, they're going to be 10 years.
Proper introduction. This is Ian Kahanowitz, who is another maven. Alan's a maven. You're a maven. And
I'll give Alan and you guys are the mavens. I'm 20 to 30 years younger than you guys, and I learned a lot by reading your material and understanding what went on when I was just a kid to a teenager. So you guys are the mavens. I learned from you.
Yeah, but we stop, don't stop. Okay, let's get to Christy Mathewson, gentlemen. I'm a Giant fan growing up, and when the Giants are playing the Dodgers, this is back in the 50s, 60s, Dodgers, Yankees, they're getting, for the most part, over the years, they're just getting schlonged. But we always had, as kids, the knowledge that there were some great New York Giants back in the days. Last week we covered Muggsy McGraw, Didion and I, and we had great ball players. Mel Ott. This guy, Christy Mathewson, was not Alan Blumkin's favorite. He's going to be objective about this. Your favorite is Grover Cleveland Alexander.
Internationally, yeah. My overall favorite is Walter Johnson.
Okay. Then, but you do have a tremendous amount of respect for Christy Mathewson.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, it's with him. It's not a Nolan Ryan thing, because Nolan Ryan, I can go for forever on how overrated he is.
I'm glad you feel that way. Also overrated as a human being, but that's another story for a number of reasons. But start with you then, Alan, and you tell us something about Christy that we just don't know?
Well, basically, a lot of people don't, he was one of the very few players of his time who graduated college. And he actually, came up with the Cincinnati Reds, and before he even, I think he pitched in one game for them, and he was traded to the Giants, even up for another great Hall of Famer, Amos Rusi, and Amos Rusi at that point was at the end of his career. He pitched mostly in the 1890s. And, McGraw fell in love with him right away, and they had a very odd friendship because McGraw was not refined, to say the least, and Mathewson was refined, and they did have an extraordinary friendship that lasted all the way. And of course, everybody knows about Mathewson that the tragedy that he caught TB when he was undergoing nerve gas training in the First World War. And I know what that's like because I had to do that when I was in basic training, not to that extent, but I had to go through it once, and it was very, very unpleasant. But once he got rolling in 1905, for the next 10 years, through 1914, he was a 20-game winner every year, and was a 30-game winner. I apologize, for 1903, not 1905. For 1903, he was a 20-game winner from 1903 through 1914 every year, and won 4 times.
As a refined gentleman, how did he end up being friends with Muggsy McGraw, who was, to say the least, not so much so?
Yeah, I wasn't around at the time. I guess they felt on some level, they felt some sort of kinship. And obviously Mathewson, because of the way he was used, was a favorite of McGraw. One of the interesting things that I'm looking at his page on the baseball reference as we speak. He had 30 saves in his career. And in 1908, he led the National.
Was totally different in those
days. National League. He led the National League in 1908 with 5 saves. Yeah, in those days, basically up through 40, 50 years ago, managers were not hesitant to use starters in relief.
Right. Hey,
because they were carrying such short staffs. I mean,
a lot of guys crossed with the Yankees, Cooks, Ditmar, all those guys were in and out.
The idea of having, they had 4 or 5 pitchers on the staff back then. The idea of having 13 pitchers on your roster back when he played in the dead ball era was totally unheard of.
Right. Ian, chip in if you would.
All right. Well, Christy, first of all, he's one of my friend's favorite pitchers, Perry Barber, who is the lady umpire. I'm always giving these adulations. And when I met her last week, she had her iPad. And on her iPad, her screensaver was Christy Mathewson. That's her favorite player of all time. She has a picture of her. Yeah, she has her picture with his bust at the Hall of Fame, and she's motioning to kiss him. So, that's her favorite player of all time. Mathewson, Mathewson is a lot of people don't know about Christy because I think as time goes by, Johnson's getting a lot more. And like Alan Johnson's my all-time favorite pitcher. Unbelievable. But, Christy, he was the oldest of 6 children. They grew up in a place called Factoryville in Pennsylvania, which was a small town in the northeastern part of the state, a little near the New York border. Now, this is very interesting. His family, his ancestors, were original followers of Roger Williams in Rhode Island, right by me, and had settled in the region as the nation began to expand westward after the Revolutionary War. And for him, he grew up, and back then, like Alan knows, and you know, towns had teams. Baseball was a community thing, and Factoryville had a team. And at age 14, he pitched for Factoryville town team, and he continued pitching in semi-pro teams in the area while attending Keystone Academy, which was a Factoryville prep school founded by his grandmother. And now the summer after his graduation from Keystone, Christy was pitching for the team from Honesdale, Pennsylvania, when a left-handed teammate named Dave Williams, who later pitched 3 games for the Boston Americans in 1902, taught him what is now called the screwball, but back then was the fadeaway. But after that, Mathewson went to Bucknell University, which was 75 miles west of Factoryville, pitched for the team. They played powerhouses such as Penn State, Army, Navy. And so for 3 years, Christy was the varsity's first string, not only in baseball, but fullback, punter, drop kicker, and he even made the All-American team in football. But to answer your question, which I did not know last week, Ralph, how did he get discovered? And he was in the minor leagues, and he had his rise. He was at Taunton, Massachusetts, in the New England League, which is about 15 minutes from my house. He pitched 17 games and was horrible. Went 2-13. Taunton folded because they lost all fundings, and they had to arrange a Labor Day exhibition just to raise funds for their transportation home. But this is where Mathewson shined. He went to the Virginia League. He amassed a 20-2 record by mid-July. After the last of those victories, Matty was told that he's been scouted and gave him a choice between being sold to either Philadelphia or New York of the National League, which again was we had the Highlanders in the American League. And Christy chose New York, thinking the Giants needed pitching more than the Phillies, and made his Major League debut on July 17, 1900, 1 month shy of his 20th birthday.
Wow. That's 19 years old, you're in the majors, and you have a choice, too. And that's something unusual, especially for the times where whatever the rules were set up, they seem to be somewhat in favor of the player as opposed to the majority of labor rules, even today. Today the pendulum has swung a little bit. But not so much as that the owners don't make their share, and a lot more. Did you know, Al Blumkin, that about Christy Mathewson being signed that way? Because the Giants...
Let me check that. Hold on a second.
Okay. My point is that the only teams back in those days, as far as I know, that had farm systems were the Cardinals, the Browns, and as far as I know, that was it. Am I right?
Oh, what happened here? That he was drafted by he was signed with Norfolk. Okay. To Norfolk at the minor league draft. According to this, in December 1900, he was drafted by the Reds in the 1900 Rule 5 draft. I didn't realize it went back that far. And a couple of days after he was drafted, the Reds traded him to the Giants on December 15th, 1900. Straight up famous Rusi, who was, practically done by it. And then, he went to the Reds to become their player manager in 1916, in July 1916. And he pitched one game for the Reds where, according to this, he gave up 8 runs. He gave up 8 runs, and that was it. In 1916, it's the only game he played that was not in a Giants uniform.
Whoa, right at the end.
Yeah.
The end. And he managed the Reds after that?
Yeah. Until they went into World War One. Until he went into World War One.
Now, you guys both agree that Johnson was the greatest of all time. What made him so? I'll start with Ian.
I think his longevity. I think even though he got injured, in 1920, he still was pitching proficiently well into the World Series that Washington went to, and his speed on the ball, according to his grandson Hank Thomas, still remained the same. I mean, the guy was a workhorse, and he never lost a beat, even well into his early 40s.
Yeah, we both had the fortune, Ian, of interviewing Hank Thomas, his Christie's grandson.
He's Walter's grandson, you mean? Walter's grandson, yeah.
Walter Johnson's.
I read the book a few years ago. I have,
Yeah, terrific guy, very soft-spoken, well-mannered guy who just as proud of his granddad as can be, which is cool. Okay, Mel Ott, Christy Mathewson, their paths crossed with the Giants, I assume.
No.
I was after.
Way after.
Okay.
10 years after.
Okay. See why you guys are the Mavens?
No. I mean, yeah, Joe McKennedy is, as the second pitcher in that team for a number of years. And Rube Marquardt, who has as much business being in the Hall of Fame, having a plaque there as I do.
Okay. What was that? A Frank Frisch thing?
It was somebody, because Marquardt's record
was...
was...
Old-timers committee.
Marquardt's record was 201 and 177. And, he had a 19-game winning streak in 1912. But the 201, 177, there are plenty of pitchers out there who have better records than I'm not in.
Okay. I just wonder why the Hall of Fame is as incredibly important as it is to Americana, let alone baseball, hasn't been able to come up with something where they're voting on every year, like DiMaggio not getting in on his first ballot, this, that, and the other thing, but going all the way back, every year there is tremendous controversy. I wonder why that is, why they haven't been able to come up with something that was fair and equitable.
Well, you put in the when they put in the Old Timers Committee, they started putting in the first major class that the Old Timers Committee put in was right after World War II, in 1946, and they put in a hodgepodge of players, some who belonged, some who didn't. The ultimate one who didn't is a 19th century outfielder by the name of Tommy McCarthy, who has, and there are so many players in the 19th century that are not in that deserve it more than this guy does. So that was it, and then you put Frisch and Geringer on the Old Timers Committee, and they started putting in people who don't belong. Frisch put in tons of old Giants and Cardinals, and the one that Geringer put in was that everybody says doesn't belong, is Rick Farrell. The wrong Farrell was in the Hall of Fame. His brother Wes was, probably one of the best hitters by a pitcher of all time, and he was a 6-time 20-game winner.
And isn't in the Hall of Fame.
He's not in the Hall of Fame.
Wow.
But Brother Rick,
How
who
about
was
Travis Jackson? I don't know much about him. Guys, was he deserving?
I think he was one of the ones that was deserving.
Okay.
Because he's possibly the best shortstop in the National League during the 20s. There weren't, there weren't very many high-ranking shortstops in the National League in those days.
Is Hornsby overrated? Because when I was growing up, he was supposedly the greatest shortstop.
No, he was a second baseman.
Who am I thinking of at shortstop then?
Wagner.
Honus Wagner, right?
Well, Honus Wagner was the best position player in the dead ball era in the National League by a very big margin. Okay, Ian, I'm sure will agree with me on that one.
Yeah, Wagner was definitely, the best shortstop, in my opinion, that probably ever played the game.
This year marks 100 years after Wagner played his last game, and he's still regarded as the greatest shortstop of all time.
And don't forget, he spent the next 40 years in the Pittsburgh organization.
Coaching, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the guy had a fantastic baseball mind, and he's overshadowed by Ty Cobb, unfortunately. But again, when you match up the numbers of the 1909 World Series, that's the only time Ty Cobb and Wagner met in the series. Ty Cobb was, 23, 24?
23, yeah, something like 23, 24, yeah.
And you had Wagner, who was 35 years old, and still out-hit Cobb. And, if circumstances were different, I think, Al, and you might agree with me, and, Wagner was able to play a few more years like Ty Cobb into the live ball era, it might have made a difference in how perceived today.
Also, the other thing is that the best Negro League shortstop was out of the same era as John Henry Lloyd.
Yeah, Lloyd was a man.
Still, after another one after 100 years, is still considered the best Negro Leaguer ever played that position.
That's a show we have to do is on barnstorming and these like Ruth and Gehrig and Feller, all these guys with barnstorm against Page and Josh Gibson. We have to talk about that on a specific episode.
Yeah, I've learned an awful lot from the Negro League site that you run here. I thought I knew a lot because that was one of the areas that I would handle when we had the trivia team. And since I've been on that side, I found out that I knew very little.
And so did I. And
I just knew the rudiments. Now I've learned an awful lot from that site.
I thank you. And let me tell you, it's not only me who puts on this.
It's Will Clark and this guy Andrew Williams.
Yeah, they're amazing, those two guys. Well, Will helps me administer it. He's huge.
Yeah.
In African American culture. He also has a site on soul music, and he's going to be on the show July 1st, which is a Saturday. If you guys want to be on the show with him, and we're going to be talking about my site. But he is so gung ho about the site that he actually tells some of the real folks who played, you got to go to the site, and he got a lot of people in to the site. We got Michelle Freeman.
Yeah, I know. I'm good friends with her on Facebook. She runs the Leon Day Foundation. Remembrance organization. And
she emails me. She's like, "You run the best site. There is no politics in it. You are."
I know, yeah.
And I don't allow that stuff. But the Historical Negro League, just like my Ty Cobb, people who, even folks like yourself, who are well steeped, well knowledgeable, well read, well educated on the subject. You always learn something. I always learn something when I go there. Even when I post, I'm like, I never do that. But you know what? A lot of people are going to know it. And that's why we have these shows. And that's why folks like you are in it and could shed new light or a different perspective. And that's why I think it works. It's like a cultural museum.
Yeah, and we try to make this network an extension of that, a baseball learning experience. And we're learning as podcasters. I learn I'm privileged to be with you guys on a regular basis, and this is pretty cool. We'll be back next week. We'll do it the same way. Alan has agreed to join us, Ian, and we're going to go back to New York. I have an interview coming up in the second part of this with Patrick Quinlan, who is former Giant bat boy when they were came to San Francisco in the 70s, and he gives tremendous Giant analyzation, current Giant analyzation. So everybody stand by for that, and I'm going to thank you guys once again. You're terrific. We will catch up next week, and I look forward to listening to your show coming up with David Nemec towards the end of the week, Alan Blumkin. As for you, my prolific friend Ian Kahanowitz, your three shows a week on the Comfortably Zone Network and Going Great Guns. So be well, everybody. Stay healthy. And I just want to tell you out there, keep on keeping on. Thank you, gentlemen.
Just one last thing, Ralph and Al.
Please.
Yeah, just one last thing. When, and this is a caveat to what we're saying, and by the way, the information I get so that both of you can look at the article itself is from Sabre itself. The article was written by Eddie Frierson on Christy Mathewson, and that's where I'm getting most of this information. But Mathewson was going to die, and he knew it. And when he finally did die, because he couldn't shake that cough from the gas, what happened was Maddie's body began to fail. He was forced to return to
Saranac Lake up in New York. Yeah.
And what happened was, we talked about the friendship between McGraw and Mathewson. Is on that day, McGraw was in Pittsburgh covering the World Series for a newspaper syndicate. When he received the news, he immediately left for New York to meet his wife, Blanche, and together they went up to Saranac Lake to be with Jane Mathewson and Christy Jr. 3 days later, with McGraw there, his wife and son standing on the graveside, Christy Mathewson was laid to rest in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, in view of Bucknell campus. So that's the ending of the caveat, and it shows the kind of respect that they had, McGraw and Mathewson, for each other.
Oh, yeah.
Nice. As a Giant fan, that's heartwarming, really. It was a tough era to play ball in and be a gentleman. So I always wondered how Christy Mathewson survived that part of his life.
Well, just like Koufax never pitched on, the Saturday, or he refused to pitch on Yom Kippur, Mathewson never pitched on a Sunday. People don't know that.
Right.
He really was the Christian gentleman.
As was Branch Rickey. He would not. I don't think they played ball on Sunday back in his day, or his teams, or he wouldn't go.
Well, it depends, because the Northeast, Boston, New York, and Philadelphia, didn't allow Sunday ball for a long time. In fact, Pennsylvania didn't allow Sunday ball until 1934. That was one of the causes that the fact that they didn't allow it that helped wreck the Connie Mack team that was so dominant from 29 through 31.
Oh, did not realize that. Were those the blue laws?
Blue laws, yeah. They called the New York had it until either 1921 or 1922, and then again nothing could start before 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And when Pennsylvania finally repealed the blue laws, for years no game could start on Sunday after 7. No inning could be played after 7 o'clock. And then at night, so you had situations. In fact, one was very famous in 1954. The Cardinals were playing. They used to schedule double headers, and they used to finish the double headers as suspended games. In fact, Jim Hearn, the pitcher, once lost a game, was charged with a loss 2 months after he retired because he stood to be a loser in a game that was suspended. They finished it up after he retired, and he wound up, getting charged with the loss. And Eddie Stanky was managing the Cardinals in 1954, and they were getting clobbered. The first game ran long. They were getting clobbered in the second game, and he was doing everything he could to stall. So by the time they had to call a curfew in the second game, they wouldn't have gone to 5 innings. And it wound up they wound up forfeiting the game.
Wow.
So that had its own
knowledge.
Yeah, and I don't know why they scheduled doubleheaders on Sundays in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh back then, but they did. What can I tell you?
Well, there's speaking of doubleheaders, there's a regularly scheduled doubleheader today or tomorrow, or maybe this weekend in Tampa, and everybody's making such a big deal of it.
No, there's one. The Mets are playing one in Atlanta.
You can't be old enough to remember this. I remember when 23, and of course, Alan, you remember when there were 23 doubleheaders played a year.
Oh yeah.
And it was, I guess that's just greed. They want to get more money, more gates.
Yeah, well, when the Yankees played a single admission on Mother's Day, if it wasn't Derek Jeter Day, and it would have created logistic problems getting the afternoon crowd out and an evening crowd in. If it wasn't Derek Jeter Day, they would have played separate admission.
I understand. They would have had 2 sellout crowds in one day.
Yeah. But because of the Jeter ceremonies were, basically cut the time between games down to approximately an hour. They made it a single admission doubleheader.
Well,
that's unusual circumstances. Normally that doesn't happen. Yeah.
Yankee Stadium. It was the first game, of course. Mantle played center, and after the first game, it would take about 15 minutes to put up the lineups for the second game, and invariably, Norm Seaburn would be playing center field in my time for Mantle in the second game, and a collective in the crowd, like you knew it. They weren't going to play Mantle in 2 games unless it was down the stretch in the last day of the season or whatever. But still, the disappointment when they put Seaburn's number, I think it was 17, if I'm not mistaken. But so that was my memory of doubleheaders.
Yeah. Also,
sorry about my rambling.
Yeah, there's one more story I'd like to relate. When Yogi Berra in 1949, or 48 or 49, begged off catching the second game of a doubleheader in Washington. It was very, very hot, and the Yankees lost the game by a run. And Berra, they went into the clubhouse. Joe DiMaggio played both games. He was out on his feet, smoking and drinking coffee like he normally did. And he shot one of those looks at Berra. He says, "You're 23 years old and you can't catch both ends of a doubleheader." And
That's right.
After that, Berra never begged off a game for the rest of his career.
Right. That's right. You're absolutely right now.
Yeah.
I read that in the Yogi Berra book by.
Eddie Lopat relayed that story. Yeah.
And also, lastly, about Christy Mathewson, to show you how prolific he was, because I get so guilty that I'm not telling people stuff. During his 17-year career, now listen to this: Mathewson won 373 games and lost 188. Now this is shocking. A 665 winning percentage. His career ERA of 2.13 and 79 career shutouts are amongst the best of all time for pitchers, and his 373 wins is still number 1 in the National League, tied with our good friend Grover Cleveland Alexander.
And 10 ahead of Warren Spahn.
And Spahn was with 3 seasons.
Yeah, I was looking also when I just checked Mathewson's page on reference that he hit 215 in his career. He was not an automatic out.
Right, and let me.
He had 7 career home runs.
Yeah, he wasn't.
Which back when he played, home runs were few and far between.
Oh yeah, he could triple that. And
yeah,
maybe more in terms of.
That's right. That's right.
So I mean, the pitchers in those days, a lot of them, learned how to not only to field their positions but to hit a little bit. Because if you could hit a little bit, that means you would stay in.
There used to be an expression, you don't hear it, help yourself. Come
Yeah.
on, kid, help yourself. That you certainly don't hear it in the American League. That's for damn sure.
No.
But we still have it in the National League. You guys think it's going to stick around? Is it going to come down to being all DH?
I sure as hell hope not.
Okay, well,
I'm a purist like Al. I really am. I think that it destroys the whole strategy of the game when you have a designated hitter in it. However, what I do think is, just like they did it back in 1973, and it was supposed to be instituted not full time, only temporary, and it just stayed there. Again, it's going to come down to money. I think Charlie Finley. I think the owners knew in the American League. Look, football is a more exciting sport. We're not scoring runs. We need more run production. And so the DH was created to get that more run production, so you bring in the stands. The chicks love it.
Yeah, it was proposed, believe it or not, in the 20s, it was proposed in the National League. Because the National League was suffering attendance, in regards to the American League because of Babe Ruth and company. And the National League wanted, was proposed in the National League that they bring, in the late 20s, that they bring in the DH, and it was shut down. So it's really ironic. When I learned this, I was very, very surprised.
You know, Al,
yes.
what's surprising? You know what's, Al? Me and Ralph had a show on Mel Ott a few weeks ago. Ott wasn't the typical power hitter that you see. He was 5'7" and weighed about 160 pounds.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'll tell you, I looked at, there's a book that the biography came out about him by a guy named Fred Stein years ago. And it had some numbers in the back. And Mel, the only thing really where he deviated from the polo grounds to the road was the number of home runs. I think the number was 323 in polo grounds. But his doubles and his, the rest of his base numbers were fairly even, and that surprised me a lot.
Now, Mel,
hey, I'll give you a stat. Stan Musial had the same number of hits at home and on the road.
1,806 both on the road. And,
right.
Yeah. And
you came up with that right out of your head, huh?
You know why? Because I looked at Musial.
No, you've just been around Blumkin too long.
Yeah, also, another thing I just learned
it's wearing off
from some book a few days ago that Musial had 3630. And I think when it was Henry Aaron that broke the record, that Rose eventually broke. And I think the 3600, I read that the 3631st hit that broke the record was given up by our good buddy, Mr. Mark Littell.
Oh,
wow.
Right.
He gave not only...
I just found this out a few days ago.
Whoa.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Now, if I recall...
I wonder if Mark knows that. I know he knows about Chambliss.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you know,
I thought, Mark DeVoe gave Chambliss 2 pages in his book. And when we had Mark on, I told him I thought that was extremely classy. And he said because Chambliss was a class guy, so I asked him whether or not he would have done the same thing if Reggie Jackson had been the one. But Reggie Jackson wasn't having a team that year. But if somebody like Reggie Jackson was, one who did, he said, no way.
But Rose had to wait because I had Jeff Katz on my show before I came onto the Comfortably Zone Network, and he wrote Split Season.
Yeah.
The strike happened, and then when Rose came back, and they thought he had a hit, it was actually an error, so they had to wait. But I know Musial was at the game in '81 when he did break his record to congratulate Pete Rose.
I got very excited when Musial got his 3,000th hit in 1958 because nobody had done that since Paul Wainer in 1942. Yeah, it's very, because back in those days, he was the first one in 16 years. Ted Williams would have been the first one to hit 500 home runs since Ott, when he finally got his 500th, and Spahn, when he won his 300th in 1961, the last one to reach that milestone was Lefty Grove in 1941. So, those
Can
three.
you imagine how many home runs Ted Williams
Oh, God, I just got into a thing on, somebody posted a picture of Ted Williams. I just said, imagine his numbers would have been if he didn't have to miss, almost 5 years in the military.
Twice, two separate primes, basically. And what's amazing, he came back from the Korean conflict, police action, as it were. A whole bunch of people getting killed. You can call it what you want to call it. War is war. In any event, he comes back and hits damn near 400 coming back. So
he hit 388 in 1950.
Yeah. 57, yeah. He was 39 years old at the time.
And we'll get to that on your show too, Al. Because
okay. Yeah, because we're doing 1958 to 1960, so he's going to come up quite frequently.
But,
hey, I gotta mention, we mentioned it, Al, on Peter Golenbach's show the other day, that Jimmy Pearsall passed, and
Jim Bunning.
And Jim Bunning. We didn't talk about Jim Bunning. We got waylaid on the Golenbach show. I wonder if, just off the top of your head, Al and Ian too, if you have any memories other than the 1964 Father's Day. Mert corrected me last night.
Well, Bunning.
Father's Day, he pitches a perfect game.
It was Father's Day.
It was Father's Day.
Yeah, it was June 21st, 1964. My friend Harvey Porras was at the game.
The last guy up?
John Stevenson.
Oh my God, you are good. You are very
good. That's basic.
Stevenson was a very unknown catcher with the Mets when they were going through catches like Grant went through Richmond.
Yeah, the only Hall of Famer that ever made the list out in a perfect game was Rube Waddell in 1904 against Cy Young. But Bunning appeared. He was the keynote speaker when Sabre had their 1997 convention in Louisville, Kentucky. Bunning was the keynote speaker. And somebody asked him why he went into the Hall of Fame as a Philly rather than a Detroit Tiger. He said because after he was, he was admitted that the Phillies called him up and congratulated and threw a day for him, and all the rest of that. The Tigers did nothing.
Oh,
it's sort of the way the Reds treat Frank Robinson, And he was very forthcoming on the whole debacle of 1964.
Oh, was he pitching every other day?
Yeah. Mark would never talk about it. In fact, Sports Illustrated wanted to do a big article on Mark, and Mark refused to talk about 1964. So the article never was written.
Oh. And Bunning, I think, remember, he ranks up there in strikeouts, but I think when he retired in '71, he had the second highest total career strikeouts in Major League history at the time.
Now, Walter Johnson, the thing about Walter Johnson is he was striking out, he wound up with 3,500 strikeouts. He was striking out batters when nobody else was.
Yeah,
so the whole thing, don't get me started on Nolan Ryan because I think he's extremely overrated. I can give you a million reasons why.
The walks. He walked.
He walked, and he lost more games than any pitcher in the 20th century. And he never made any of the teams he was on better.
Wow.
You look at a Mathewson or a receiver or Walter Johnson or any of these types. They made the teams that they were on better.
And one thing about Mathewson, many people don't know, he was in the 1936 class.
Yeah, he's one of the 5, yeah.
Yeah, he was. And, of course, he was dead about 11 years. But what people don't know, even more so, was that his jersey, denoted as NY, has been retired by the Giants, hangs in the corner currently in the left field corner of AT&T Park, and uniform numbers were not used during the time when Mathewson played for the Giants. In 1999, the Sporting News ranked him number 7 of the of the 100 greatest baseball players, and ESPN selected his performance in the 1905 World Series as the greatest playoff performance of all time. And in addition, during the Second World War II, a 422-foot Liberty ship named in his honor, the SS Christy Mathewson, was built in Richmond, California, in 1943. And his plaque at Baseball Hall of Fame says the greatest of all great people.
Master of them all, yeah.
That's it.
Right. Richmond is like about 30 miles up the road from where I live.
Yeah, except for Joe Tinker. Yeah, Joe
okay,
Tinker.
guys, I'm going to ask you one question. You both must remember the Encyclopedia of Baseball by a guy named Richard Neft. And
I have several editions of those, yeah.
Okay.
They stopped putting out
in the early edition.
10 years ago was the last one that they put out because, it got to be huge and expensive, and everything's online now.
Computer, right.
Yeah.
But they had something in the early editions, and I don't have it anymore, and I'm wondering if you guys do. It's a chart of pitchers who have had winning percentages higher than their teams. And you mentioned this because Nolan Ryan's, you're talking about Nolan Ryan, it came to mind. Whitey Ford's winning percentage
was higher than the Yankee teams he was on.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I think, if it comes down to it, that is the greatest indication of Ford's worth. Makes him right up there with all the players, all the pitchers that we think about as the greatest of all time. We think, Ford is the chairman of the board, but his name gets lost in people's memories. I mean, when you think,
John, from what I understand, Walter Johnson
comes up.
Yeah, Walter Johnson's the number 1 of all time in that category. It's called wins above team, and very high on that list also is a certain pitcher used to pitch for the Mets by the name of Tom Seaver. He's very high on that list.
Okay, is there a way to get that list? Is that list on the wins above team? Is that on the internet?
I don't know. I'm sure that they don't show it on the reference, but I don't know. I don't know whether or not that's built in, and you have to find the right way to request it.
I'm going to have to get an old edition of that encyclopedia.
Yeah, because I remember that. Yeah, because Walter Johnson was number 1, and even in fact, he didn't pitch long enough. But the 7 seasons the Yankees had Vic Rachi, he was a 706. I'm sorry, he's 120 and 50 with them.
Whoa.
Yeah, so
and I wanted to mention, this is a callback to what we were talking about when pitchers pitched both as starters and relievers. Allie Reynolds was incredibly dominant as a relief pitcher, as a swingman in those Yankee dynasty years from 49.
I made him practically a full-time reliever in 1953, and I just finished reading a book that came out several years ago. It's a triple biography of Rachi, Reynolds, and Lopat. It's by a man named Lou Friedman. It's a McFarlane book, and I found I learned some stuff in there. I thought that I know. Yeah, there were a couple of errors, but you're going to find a couple of errors in any of these books.
One of the first interviews I ever did in my life baseball interviews was in 1995 with Charlie Silvera, and he joked with me. He says they should put those guys in the Hall of Fame
as a unit.
Pardon?
As a unit.
As a unit, like a trilogy type thing. It would it'd be good for the Hall. It would be good for publicity for the Hall. It could show you, and they deserve it as a unit. I mean, and you add Ford to that. Because that was Whitey's early years.
No, Whitey only
but I thought that's
two years with them.
Winning more games, winning a higher percentage than the Yankees couldn't be beat. Speaking of teams, players that make a team better, that's a good example. I wonder what Johnson is on that list.
He's number one.
115th.
Oh, okay.
150th. And you know why? I just got the list from Baseball Almanac, which I'll send to both of you. For winning percentages, Johnson had a 0.59914 winning percentage. And he's ranked.
Baseball Almanac has that list that we're talking about?
Yeah, it's not just winning, but winning more with often than losing. To make this chart, you first need at least 1,000 innings pitched. This eliminates the one-year wonders, and so Baseball Almanac is pleased to present the top 100 all-time winningest Major League pitchers along with raw averages to further clarify their position on this All-American chart. So, winning percentage.
I can't wait to get it. I'm going to devour that one.
Yeah. To me, that's a statistic that I really have a lot of respect for.
Yeah,
if you look at Nolan Ryan, Nolan Ryan never came close to winning the Cy Young Award. And they said, well, he pitched for mediocre teams. I said, but his numbers were mediocre. His win-loss numbers were mediocre.
Well, he did have those 5 no-nos.
He had 7 no-nos. But that's all these people look at. Don Larson got Hall of Fame votes for years after he pitched the perfect game. He was 81 and 91 lifetime, and included in those numbers was a 3-21 year with the 54 Royals and a 1-10 year with the 60 A's. And this guy got Hall of Fame votes. Because I said if he didn't pitch the perfect game, he wouldn't even be remembered by 95% of the people.
Oh, no question about that. He'd be another Johnny Cooks or another.
He wasn't even as good as Johnny Cooks that one year.
Those guys there were a lot of injuries. Speaking of injuries that we having now, there were injuries to pitchers back then, too.
Oh, yeah. Ford, for 55 to 64, the Yankees pitching staff was Whitey Ford, and they had tons of guys who had 1 or 2 years that wound up getting hurt. And that was it.
Right. Yeah, so this whole injury phenomenon is not that strange and that different than the way it was. It's more publicized. The Tommy John surgery itself gets the publicity, an incredible amount of publicity, just because of the name Tommy John.
Yeah, and the Yankees with Cooks, they also had a righty named Tom Sturman who won 16 games each in 56 and 57, and they blew his arm out in 58. Right. And 59, the Yankees shipped him and Cooks along with Jerry Lumpy to the Kansas City A's for Hector Lopez and Ralph Terry, who originally signed with the Yankees, and the Yankees sent them out to get basically a major league farm team.
Right, but don't kid yourself. Lumpy was a loss. Lumpy was a good ball player for Kansas.
Stengel didn't like him.
I know. I know that. There were a lot of guys in that group, Kerry and Boyer.
Yeah, the younger players couldn't stand Stengel. The older players, like DiMaggio and Rizzuto, who played under McCarthy, couldn't stand Stengel, and the young ones, the ones in between, loved him.
Right. Well, well, even the ones in between, like Woodling and Bauer, they weren't crazy about him either. But they ended up cashing a bunch of World Series checks.
Yeah, this was when they did a Times Sunday crossword puzzle a few years ago, and it says philosophy of management. There's a Casey Stengel quote. It says that the secret to success as a manager is to keep the 5 guys who hate you away from the 5 guys who are undecided.
Right. That's a good one. That's a good one. Hey, guys, thank you. Ian, appreciate it. And Alan, I appreciate it as well.
Okay, thank you. See
You'll
you Thursday,
next
Ian.
week, guys.
All right.
Ian,
Okay.
you're fine.
Okay.
Ian may be gone. Ian may have lost us.
No, I'm here.
Again,
Okay.
Oh, okay.
See you Thursday, Ian.
I thank you in advance for sending us that stuff. Thursday with David Nemec.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear that because that's a joy listening to you guys. Till that time, gentlemen.
Okay, goodbye.
All right. Take care, folks.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
And if you're listening out there, I hope you're having fun. I know I am. Thanks a lot.